Welcome to my video presentation on the aims, methods, advantages and disadvantages of monitoring athletes' training loads. When working with athletes, the goal is always to improve upon their performance, and coaches, high-performance managers and sports scientists all agree that monitoring an athlete's training load is extremely important. However, the challenge lies due to the various training modes in which athletes train. We've got conditioning, strength training, and in some instances, combative training. And bringing all this data together can be challenging and confusing. When we look at the aim of monitoring an athlete's training load, it can be summed up in two words. The first word is prevention. Prevention of overtraining, overreaching, and injuries. The second word is effectiveness. So being able to measure the effectiveness of a training program and how your athlete's adapting to a specific training program. When we look at the methods can also be broken down into two categories. You can look at the internal load on the body, such as heart rate, oxygen consumption, and blood work. And then you can also look at the external forces on the body, such as power output and GPS data as an example. There's unfortunately no one method which will work best for all sports. It's up to the coaches and high performance managers to design a system that's going to work for them and provide them with accurate and reliable and also worthwhile data. As I mentioned before, those are two strategies. So you're looking at the internal forces and external forces. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those now. So the first one is the external force, looking at, say, the GPS data. GPS data is used by a lot of sporting teams now, and that data is really good because it gives you instant feedback. So it can be on your computer and you see training load, number of high-speed efforts, how fast your athletes are running, and the distance covered. Okay. From there, we also have some disadvantages. The disadvantage is that the coach and high-performance manager can be obsessed by that data and only look at that data, and it takes their vision away from their athletes, so they no longer are watching technique or game style and things like that. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about in terms of external force is field testing. Field testing can be broken down into your aerobic, strength and power tests. Okay, these are normally used in pre-season, and they're used to help monitor their training program and make sure that their athletes are getting the most out of their training programs. Some of the issues with that or disadvantages is normally when they're in competition, they decide to stop using those systems. Another disadvantage is that, say, maximal testing, say 1 RM or 3 RM, can put extra stress on their athletes, so they don't like to do that in competition. Talking a little bit more about the internal loads now. So the internal loads, we use some subjective data, which can come in the way of an RPE or a rate of perceived exertion. So about half an hour after a training session, you ask athletes, how hard was that training session? And they can give you a score between 1 and 10 is a common scale. Also, a fatigue questionnaire is a quite common method as well, and you can use those two together or in conjunction with one another to do that. Unfortunately though, if you have a lazy athlete or someone that doesn't like to work hard or something like that, they can outscore the others, but what you do is end up getting a group average, and that works really, really well. The last one I'm going to talk about is the physiological loads, looking at blood work, heart rate monitoring, oxygen consumption and those sort of things. So the advantage of that is it gives you brilliant feedback in your training program and how your clients are adapting. Athletes to the training program. The disadvantages though are it's lab-based. That's also an advantage because it's easy to replicate, but the disadvantage is that it can be expensive and you need qualified personnel to look at the data and make sure that they're getting the most out of that data or interpreting that data correctly. All right, in conclusion, there's no gold standard, unfortunately, in athlete monitoring and measuring. It's really dependent upon what the sport is and what you're looking at getting out of the data. The other really important thing is that your athletes, coaches and high performance managers, everyone's buying into that system and realize how important it is. You also really want to get a good combination of external and internal loads. so you get the best idea and best system that works for your team and your athletes. Last note as well, super important when we're looking at athlete monitoring, is we want to pay close attention to the recovery strategies. So making sure our athletes are hydrated, their nutrition's good, they're getting enough sleep, because they can be showing really high scores in terms of RPE and stuff like that, just purely because they're not recovering. So there's a little thing where you talk about overtraining or under recovering. All right, on that note, I am done. Thank you.